Hey, what's up guys? It's Tasty Meat Chunks, and for this week's video, we're going to be talking about how to carry games on DPS. There are a lot of insta-lock DPS players out there, but I want to make sure that you are not getting hit with the same, oh my god, another DPS insta-locker comments every single time you load into your ranked games. Now, the name of the game when it comes to playing DPS effectively is pressure. It's not kills, it's not flashy plays, it's pressure. As a DPS player, you want to maximize your pressure at all times, such that the enemy team can't do what they want. It's sort of similar to my tank video when we talked about how the tanks create space by putting pressure with their character positioning. You are going to do this with your threat positioning. So if you're playing a character like Hawkeye or Hela, you want those long sight lines. But you also usually want high ground or cover near you so that you can easily sustain yourself in a long-term engagement. If you're playing a character like Magic, you probably want to be either in the front line or taking flanks depending on your team's composition, looking for an opportunity to engage with your team to get the most value you can. A lot of the DPS players have pretty solid mechanical skills, but what separates a good from a great DPS player is their positional awareness and the awareness of their team. It doesn't matter if you Spider-Man ult in their backline and get 4 picks. If your team has already lost supports and already lost the point, that's not going to do anything to actually win you this fight. Unless you are so goated that you are truly killing 6 every single team fight, you are going to rely on your team. And even if you are that good, going with your team means that you will more consistently kill 6 instead of only sometimes. The general thing you want to do is make your fights as unfair for the person you're fighting as you possibly can. That means fighting while you have pocket, that means fighting while you have positional advantage, that means fighting while you have numbers advantage, or that means fighting while there is another distraction which causes them to split focus. You never want to be the only focus of the enemy team. You are not a tank. What you do want to do is take advantage of the threats and the attention your tanks and your supports are creating so that you can get value. It's the inverse of a tank. A tank wants to take more attention from the enemy team to get those resources and attention put on them because they can handle that damage. You want to take advantage of that attention from your tank to get the most value you can. You know those times where you're playing and your tanks are too scared to push up because they'll explode, your supports are too scared to heal anything because they'll get dove, and your DPS can't get to the spots they need to get the damage out? That's because of pressure. Those times where you're like, I don't know what's happening, we just can't move. That's pressure. The enemy team's DPS are exerting pressure, their tanks are taking attention, and their supports are positioning well. This is why DPS is probably one of the harder roles to carry on, because it's really easy to brain off and play DPS. You can play Moon Knight or Bucky or Punisher and just sit in the backline and spam out. I'm not saying those characters don't take skill, but I am saying they are easier characters to turn your brain off on. But if you compare that to an actually good Moon Knight, Punisher, Bucky, they're not playing that way. They're playing in positions that make them hard to reach and hard to clear. They're playing so that they hold sight lines parallel to the team that cause pressure to be exerted on the front or back line, causing their team to fall apart. They're looking for big cooldowns that burst down a tank or pick off a support. They're not overcommitting to the kills, getting themselves traded out every fight, and they're not going purely for numbers because they know what they need to do. Your job as a DPS is to make it as hard as possible for the other team to do what they want to do through your damage pressure, through your threat pressure, and through your positioning. I mentioned this in the support video, I'm going to mention it again here. A good rule of thumb for positioning on DPS is, can I hit the person I want to hit? And am I safe if like a Wanda ults went off? A good DPS position is going to be somewhere where you have advantage. That means high ground, that means cover, that means pocket, that means support from your team, and the other team does not. That means they're split from the team, that means they're isolated, that means they are not the focus of their team right now. And you also want the distraction of your front line, obviously. This might mean that you actually end up doing a lot less pressure in the front line than you otherwise would have, but your pressure is much more meaningful because of the threat of it. There should never be a point where the other team pings you out and says, we don't need to worry about that person. It should be a point of them pinging you out and being like, we need to stay on high alert because there's a Black Panther in our backline or a Psylocke. Or does anyone see Iron Man? They probably have ults. And while we're here, let's talk about ults. I think the biggest thing that loses DPS players games is they don't know how to carry with ults. Your ult should be a solution to a problem. Let's say we're playing Wolverine and they have something like a Cloak and Dagger. Wolverine ults can kill through Cloak and Dagger ultimate. So if you save this ult for that instance, you can get a very big pick for your team, shutting down an ultimate that's probably already denying your team value and swinging the momentum of the fight for your team for a relatively low impact ult on the Wolverine side. Everybody already knows about Iron Man shutting down all of the support ults, and a lot of people know that if you damage boost Punisher, he can kill Luna Snow through their ult if they hit all their shots. But you need to be thinking of this in two ways. Number one, can I kill through an ultimate? If the answer is no, and we know they have ultimate, why are we ulting? There are two reasons you could be doing this. Number one, your team has a pretty strong ult combo or trade that you want to get a defensive ult out of the way for. Number two, it's early before the fight really starts, and getting that ult out will make a big difference. Or number three, and this is the most likely reason a lot of people have, I didn't think it through. Why are they always ulting my ult? Because they're saving it to stop you because your ults are trash. Most of the time, especially in lower ranks, where most of this advice is going to be the most impactful, supports are actually pretty dog shit at using ultimates. A lot of them panic ult at the nearest sign of pressure. Tank getting low, flanker getting them on crit, anything like that. Because they don't properly plan their sequence for when that engagement will happen. If they have a Black Panther, if they have a Psylocke, if they have a Spider-Man, and I'm playing support, I should be planning around the fact that they are going to dive me. I'm not going to have my ult every fight. I need to have a solution or a plan with my team for when that happens. When we're talking about like diamond and below, hell, when we're talking about most ranks, the supports don't have that plan, or they don't have the mechanical skills they need to properly execute on that plan. This means it's up to you to mess up that plan for them. You are going to get in, pressure them, get that ult out, disengage. Then the second the ult is done, boom, free ult for you. Sure, shutting down an ultimate in an ultimate is going to feel a lot better, but that's a carry play. You don't want to be going exclusively for carry plays on DPS. You don't want to be going exclusively for carry plays on anyone. You want to be putting yourself in positions where you don't need to make the carry play because it's just going to be that easy to pick them apart. If you focus on your positioning, where your team is, how you're taking these fights, and then finally, target priority, you are going to have much more successful engagements that mean you don't need to make the crazy carry play of shutting down two ultimates. And when that does happen, it's just an added bonus onto an already stomp of a game or to you already holding your weight. Let's talk target priority. And while we're here, also stats. Stats in this game are absolutely meaningless. There is one stat in the game that matters, that is deaths. As a DPS player, you are going to be looking at more deaths than your team, but it shouldn't be that many more. And if one of your teammates is feeding, it shouldn't be more than that. There's a lot of times where you get in a situation where you'll have a tank with like 2 deaths and a DPS with 12. That DPS is dying too much. If the tank player is playing correctly, they should be disengaging from fights that are already lost, usually because that DPS player got picked first, and the rest of the team should be following suit. Your team doesn't want to take fights in disadvantage, so you should not be putting them in disadvantage by being a first pick. You should be the one getting the first picks. And a pick is really just the first couple eliminations of the fight. The last ones do not matter. If my team kills 4 and the rest of their team is retreating and you kill 2 of ours in the backline, I don't care because my team already won the fight. Your team's already disengaging and we're probably at least trading out one of those characters while your team waits for you to respawn and our team comes back first. This is why the elimination stat doesn't matter. If you save that pressure for the next fight, if you kept that engage and waited for regroup, if you stayed hidden and waiting for that next chance, then got those first 2 picks either early or when the fight started, those are picks. Those help you win the fight. If your team loses 4 people after you get those first 2 picks, you gave them the win and they fumbled it, as opposed to that team won and you just inted for no reason for stat padding and a couple eliminations that do not matter. This goes extra for damage. Damage is useless if it isn't leading to picks. Sure, I can sit there and pad my stats and get the most damage in the lobby on Moon Knight for the whole game, but if I'm not getting those final blows and more importantly those opening picks, I'm doing air for the team. The only thing I'm doing is actually hurting the team because my damage is going to my ultimate charge, but it's also going to both of their supports' ultimate charge. Or if they have 3 supports, all of their supports' ultimate charge. This means that my most damage in the match is actually hurting the team. because it's not converting into picks. It's not converting into actual secured eliminations. It is only converting into support ultimates for their team. This goes double for when we're shooting for no reason and we already have an ult. We're not doing anything. If our shots aren't making pressure, if it's not changing how the enemy team is playing, we are in a bad position shooting a bad target. This is okay if we need to build ult charge quick, or we're cleaning up picks, or we need to stall cart. It's not okay at the beginning of the fight, which is where your most impactful plays will happen on DPS. So let's talk about target priority. The bottom of the list on target priority is tanks. The tank's job is to get you to shoot them, to get you to look at them, to get you to walk away from them and be scared of them. There are characters where your target priority is tanks. Wolverine, Punisher with the shotgun, Bucky with a good hook before a fight starts, but those are character specific. The general duelist rule of thumb is you want to be looking at either supports or DPS. Which one of these you are looking for changes based on the timing. Do they have a big support ult? Then it should be supports you're targeting. Is there a DPS who's been flanking the whole game and heavily targeting your backline? Then it should be DPS, but specifically peeling for your supports, shutting down that DPS. If you don't know what peeling is, it is just going to help on an engagement the enemy team is making on one of your players. So their Black Panther dives your Luna Snow, you are diving that Luna Snow on your team to push the Black Panther off, or at least trade them out. Aside from that, there's just the general rule of thumb of any isolated target should be focused, and any targets you can hit from an advantageous position should be focused. The problem I have a lot when I'm playing DPS is I play a lot of tank. So I find myself continuing to go for pressure that I know I don't have the resources to survive because I start to go on autopilot. This is why I'm telling you not to go on autopilot. Don't play like I play. Play as I say. So let's say I'm playing Magic and I see someone disengage into their team. Well, if I'm playing Captain America, sure, I can run in, probably hit them a few more times, maybe even secure that pick. But I'm not playing Captain America. I'm playing Magic. I'm playing Black Panther. I'm playing Wolverine. You do not have the resources to survive that long-term engagement. Maybe if you're playing Mr. Fantastic, but he's just a tank that they pretend is a DPS for some reason. What I should be doing is saying, I succeeded in the pressure. I got them to disengage from the spot I didn't want them in to a spot I wanted them in. I got resources out. I got attention out. I disengage. I come back when the next opening is. It is fine to not secure your pick if you secured the pressure that the pick would have gotten. Let me explain. If I shoot their Mantis to crit, and their Mantis has to now disengage for a health pack or hide in the backline until their health comes back, I do not need to turbo int onto the Mantis and possibly die to finish getting that pick, because what does the pick actually get your team? Sure, it gives them numbers advantage, but more importantly, it gets those resources off of the field. Those resources are already off of the field. If the Mantis comes back, they're still on crit. They still die. If you kill the Mantis, there's less of a risk of distraction for the other support to go help them. The Mantis is scared of you now. They know that you almost killed them. They know that you were looking for them. They're going to play a lot more cautiously. They're going to be a lot more scared. If you int trade out and die, they're going to think, wow, that guy's kind of an idiot, but I should be a little bit more cautious. They're not going to be as afraid. So that's the main name of the game. Pressure, minimizing risks, taking unfair fights, having good target priority, and understanding what the purpose of your damage is. Does your team need more peel? Does your team need more backline pressure? Does your team need more of a front line? These are all things that you will solve by playing DPS. How are we ulting? Are we ulting smart? Do we know what we're looking for on their team? What big cooldowns shut down our ultimates? What big cooldowns our ult shuts down? If you start taking all of these things into account, you will start carrying astronomically on DPS. And one final tip, don't one-trick. One-tricking is dumb. If you one-trick, especially meta-pick one-tricking, you're putting yourself into a box because, number one, the second that you get out of plat, you're fucked if your character is ever a meta ban pick. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen a Namor one-trick sell us the game, Cloak and Dagger one-trick, Storm one-trick, Hela or Hawkeye one-tricks. And number two, this is the very, very final tip. Never be reliant on a team up. You know, it's like Iron Man himself said, if you're nothing without the Hulk team up, then you shouldn't have it. You should be making your picks around your team's composition and what your team needs. And you should be playing powerful team ups so that you can take more unfair fights and do all the things that I said. But if you're ever in a situation where you need pocket, where you need team up, where you need blank, you are not taking an unfair fight. You are expecting the fight to become unfair because of things outside of your control, which means we're playing wrong. Would you be taking more unfair fights and carrying harder if you had the Luna Snow Icicle shoved up your ass the whole game? Probably, but we don't have it right now. So we are taking an unfair fight for ourselves, expecting it to magically become an unfair fight for them. That's just stupid. Anyways, I hope that some of these tips have been helpful in getting you to think a bit more carefully about how we play DPS, about what our goals are on DPS, about what the pitfalls and traps are for DPS players. And of course, closing it out with the same advice I have for all of them: don't just play DPS. You should have a full understanding of this game. That doesn't mean you need to play everything in comp, but you should have some supports you play. You should have some tanks you play. You should be playing all of them regularly so that you do not tunnel vision on one role and one role only, because understanding the other roles and their experiences will make you better at your main role. That is all. Tasty Meat Chunks signing out. Happy Monday.